Hey everyone, today I just wanted to talk about Mighty Number 9. It may seem like I'm just hunting controversies at this point, but I promise that this is not the case. But speaking of the controversies I'm most definitely not hunting for, Mighty Number 9 was the source of quite a few. It can be very difficult, if not impossible, for some to judge the game as it is, divorced from these factors, but that's exactly what I'm going to try to do. That's a little easier for me than many others who've played the game because I didn't back the game on Kickstarter, though it took some willpower for me not to. But with that all said, let's get started. Alright, so generally speaking, I do not think graphics are all that important when it comes to actually enjoying a game. Now, it's a lot more true for some games than it is for others, but generally speaking, I think art style is a lot more important than graphics are. The problem with Mighty Number 9 is that the game is absolutely abysmal on both of these fronts. The game has a 3D presentation that's uninspiring at best and absolutely hideous at worst. I mean, just look at these cheese corn explosions. Oh, maybe they're cheese pizza. I don't know exactly, but I'm pretty sure that some kind of cheese was involved at some point. Now, this is indicative of the game's overall visual style. If it had to be summed up in just a few words, I would probably go with iPhone game, personally, as the game has a color palette and level of fidelity that just screams low effort. The art style of the game's titular character is also a bit weak from my perspective. It's too busy to really be visually distinctive, but still lacks the little details that would really make the character stand out. The enemies and bosses don't really fare much better though, honestly. The main threat against Mighty Numero 9 seems to come from living trash cans, automatic forklifts, and other pedestrian objects. This is possibly the most surprising deficiency in the game, honestly, as its director, Keiji Inafune, was a graphic artist before he was anything else, and he designed the look of the original Mega Man games for the most part. More troubling, though, than the visual design is... Alright, now game design is a pretty broad term, but in this case what we're talking about is the level design and the placement of enemies and objects within those levels. So, the game's levels are laid out in a way that is pretty visually restrictive to the player. There are even spots in a fair number of levels that require the player to die just in order to progress. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that this is bad game design. I personally am not the type that minds dying in a game like this. I do not even mind having to replay sections, and that's going to be the main defense against this criticism for most players defending the game, is that you just need to get good. But what I do mind are sections of levels where I visually cannot see an instant kill obstacle before putting myself on a collision course with it. This makes for situations where even the most skilled players will suffer deaths, sometimes multiple in a single level due to no fault of their own. This is especially a problem with vertical platforming areas in the game. I cannot tell you how many times I died because the game forced me to take a literal leap of faith down a vertical path only to be vaporized by an instant kill obstacle I could not see before jumping down. This leads to trial and error gameplay. This type of gameplay is annoying at the best of times when it's used in something like a graphical adventure, where that's the type of game that made this sort of gameplay popular. But in an action platformer, this sort of gameplay is absolutely intolerable. The level of thoughtlessness here is really a theme in this game, as there are so many moments, so many encounters, situations, and areas where I just think, dude, if you had stopped to think about that for even a single second, you would not have done it this way. And that is a theme that carries through to my next talking point. Another of Mega Man's defining features are the colorful cast of bosses that are in each game. Now, unfortunately for all of us, Mighty Number 9 falls flat in this respect in pretty much every way it can. I mean, seriously, I just finished my playthrough yesterday at the time of recording this, and I cannot remember a single detail about the appearance of these bosses, or even what their names were, honestly. And that's definitely a bummer, but the bigger issue is that the combat encounters with the bosses themselves are really poorly thought out. Now, generally in Mega Man games, there are certain weapons that specific bosses are weak to, and this incentivizes tackling the game's levels in different orders to experience the game in a different way. Now, in Mighty Number 9, the bosses react to every weapon so similarly that there's no real incentive to learn the less straightforward and more complicated weapons' timing and functions. Why am I going to bother figuring out the timing to attack a boss with some very risky ramming weapon when I can just shoot him at a distance instead and, not die? The bosses just really and truly seem to not have had much thought put into them, which is another thing worth talking about. Maybe the most important thing worth talking about. Title card, please. And this is really it right here, the meat and potatoes of what is wrong with this game. the main affliction of this game seems to have suffered behind the scenes is this thoughtlessness. A degree of thoughtlessness that is almost unbelievable to me. In truth, it kinda seems unlikely that an experienced designer wouldn't notice these massive glaring problems, and I'm tempted to call this thoughtlessness laziness instead as a result of that. But the real problems with the game don't even come from the absent-minded level design or the unmemorable bosses. They come from all the little things that this thoughtlessness or malaise, whichever it is, happen to impact. And those things are the details. One major instance of this is the hitboxes in the game. A hitbox is a simplified shape used to detect collision or interaction between two things in a game. In Mighty No. 9, the hitboxes for a commanding percentage of the obstacles that can kill you instantly are bigger than the visual presence of these obstacles. And that may sound like a tiny little thing, but I assure you it has major consequences. It has been a common practice in games for many years, back multiple hardware generations even, to make the hitboxes for obstacles, instant kill ones especially, smaller than their visual presence. This gives the player a little extra time and leeway to deal with these obstacles, and just generally kind of helps improve the flow of the game. Yet again, I cannot tell you how many times I was vaporized and sent back to the nearest checkpoint, because one of these enlarged hitboxes vaporized me from a distance or angle that it should not have been able to. And what makes this problem even worse is the frequent placement of enemies near these obstacles, and being damaged by these enemies can and often will push you just a little distance needed to vaporize your sorry ass and nearly cause you to Hail Mary your controller through the wall. There are other things that are equally baffling and enraging though as well. The placement of checkpoints in this game will leave even the least discerning gamer scratching their head and wondering, why the hell is that checkpoint here instead of there? I mean, it legitimately makes no sense at some times. Unless the objective was to frustrate the player into putting down the controller, there are some decisions regarding checkpoint placement that I do not understand at all. There is even a level that has no checkpoints. And what makes this even more frustrating is that this is the only level of the first 8 levels, which make up the bulk of the game, that has a novel concept, but it's marred by this utter lack of sense, or possibly unbelievable laziness, I really don't know. Because in this particular level, you're hunting a sniper, and this can be very confusing because throughout the game up to this point, you followed the standard platforming and general 2D game convention of moving from left to right, but this level requires you to backtrack the way you came at times. This is a level with instant kill obstacles peppered throughout, but no checkpoints. I cannot think of a single good reason for this to be the case, as there are any number of solutions that could have worked to solve this problem. Even the game's new gimmick goes underdeveloped. The dashing mechanic makes it possible to traverse through a level in the game incredibly quickly if the player decides to do this and is capable of doing this. But the problem with that is that there's no real incentive for the player to hurry in the actual game, other than to get the game over with quicker, which I guess is something you may very well want to do, but there are tons of ways to make this more rewarding for the player. The one that I thought of first is they could have added a par timer for each level, and every X number of seconds the player arrives under the par time will remove X% of the boss's starting health, making the boss easier if the player managed to master the base gameplay enough to arrive faster than the par time. But the solution is not in place. Instead, no solution is. I don't think these issues would be so frustrating if not for the fact that the game controls so well. It excels in that one specific area, but that makes the game so much more frustrating than if the game just sucked universally, across the board. It makes the game feel like someone there actually really knew what they were doing. They just didn't really care enough to do it. And that's really what this is all about. I honestly feel like a broken record, but again, it's not the controversy about this game that hurts it. It's the game itself. It is the apathy that the creators apparently felt for their craft. I kind of feel like that guy from Good Will Hunting who's trying to get Matt Damon to stop being a loser and spending all his time getting drunk with Ben Affleck, except Matt Damon is Keiji Inafune, Ben Affleck is the studio that made this game, and instead of getting drunk, it's just about not giving a shit about the quality of what they released. It's not a perfect metaphor, because Ben Affleck was pretty awesome in that movie, but I think you get what I'm saying. I have to say that this game instilled some real doubts in me. I used to be a huge fan of Keiji Inafune. Now though, I'm really not so sure. Is he like Will Hunting and he's a genius who just has trouble applying himself? Or is he maybe not as brilliant as I used to think, and he maybe got some credit from some other brilliant people on his team in the beginning? I honestly just do not know, and that is really important with a game like this. The game was sold on his involvement, it. It was touted as a return to form for a series that is for the most part laid abandoned by its masters at Capcom. This was supposed to be the spiritual successor that would remind us all what made Mega Man so great, and in a roundabout way, I guess it sorta did. Not by showing us all the great things we'd been missing, but by half-assing all of them, so we're forced to go back to the older Mega Man games and remember why we loved those games, and not this game in the first place. And anyway, so that about wraps it up for this video, but I just wanted to take another second to thank the people who've been sharing my videos and leaving me nice and constructive comments. This week I found out that Google has permanently terminated my AdSense account because of some irregular traffic on a blog I had 5 years ago, and this means I'll never be able to make money on YouTube, or not from views anyway. And that doesn't bother me too much because I hate ads and would most likely not be willing to put them on my videos to begin with because of what that forces those who enjoy my content to suffer through. So right now, the positive comments and sharing of my content really does mean a lot to me. The only problem is that this level of output, doing a video every week or even more often, is really time consuming and draining. I lost my job not too far back, so I have the time at the moment, but my output is going to slow down considerably once I'm working again. I'm thinking I may make a Patreon after I release a few more videos, because I really don't expect anybody to have enough confidence in me to put money in on what I'm doing until I prove I can actually deliver consistently. But if I did, that would really be the only way for me to keep up this level of output. I would not be comfortable doing it unless I delivered some serious value to the people who put their money in on that, but I would be putting things like my scripts for the videos in, documentary style clips of what goes into making these videos, and I was thinking about actually doing commentaries for my playthroughs on certain games, since that's something I've always wanted to do and would love to do, but just isn't viable without outside help. And anyways, I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that, and if that would be something that might interest any of you in the future. Like I said, it won't happen for a little while regardless, and I'm never going to put ads in my videos, even if Google reinstates my AdSense account. But anyways, that's all I really wanted to say, so just thank you guys again for watching.